The rejection letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, thin as an apology and twice as cold. She read it standing by the window, the paper trembling between her fingers as if it already knew how much it would hurt. Not selected. 2 words. No explanation. No second glance. Outside, the range flag snapped in the wind, and for a moment Maya Rourke imagined the sound was laughter, sharp, relentless, impossible to ignore. They had told her she didn't have the temperament. That her hands were steady but her mind was too emotional. That she shot well on clean days but faltered when the weather turned ugly. One instructor, who never quite looked her in the eye, said she lacked the instinct for long-range work. Maya nodded through every critique, swallowed every slight, and walked out with her back straight because pride was the last thing they hadn't taken from her. But when the door closed, the weight of it crushed her chest. Sniper school was the summit she had trained towards since she learned how to breathe through a rifle. And now it was gone. She didn't quit. That was the part no one expected. Instead, she drove to a forgotten stretch of desert where the land rolled like a tired ocean and the wind changed its mind every minute. She marked distances with a GPS in old survey stakes, scribbled dope in a weathered notebook, and learned the language of mirage like it was a second tongue. She practiced when the sun blistered the ground and when the cold crept into her bones at dusk. She practiced when her eyes burned and when her confidence did, too. When the wind lied to her, she learned how to hear the truth in its silence. There were nights she slept in the truck, cheek pressed to the steering wheel, dreams full of crosshairs and drifting dust. There were mornings she woke up angry, at the school, at the instructors, at herself. And there were days she nearly drove away for good. On those days, she remembered her father's hands, scarred, steady, guiding hers on A.22 when she was 10. Don't fight the rifle, he had said. Listen to it. He had died before he could see how far she'd come, but his voice never left her. Months passed, then a year. Maya became quieter, sharper. She learned how humidity could lie like a friend and how elevation could steal your breath and your margin at the same time. She learned patience not as stillness, but as restraint, waiting for the exact moment when the world lined up and offered you a clean truth. Word spread, slowly, the way real things do. A range officer mentioned a civilian-looking shooter, who could thread steel at distances that made seasoned marksmen squint. An old coach from the school heard about a woman who shot in wins others refused to log. He didn't believe it, not until he saw the data. When the announcement came, it was almost an afterthought. A sanctioned attempt at the range, open to anyone who met the safety and qualification standards. The record for the longest confirmed shot had stood for years, a number whispered with reverence. Maya read the notice twice, then folded it and placed it beside her notebook. She didn't smile, she just breathed. On the day of the attempt, the sky was a hard blue, the kind that made distances feel honest and cruel. The range buzzed with low voices and skepticism. She recognized faces from the school, men who had passed, men who hadn't. A few nodded politely, some smirked. One instructor stared at her rifle like it had personally offended him. Maya lay prone on the mat, the world narrowing to the stock against her shoulder and the slow, familiar rise and fall of her breath. Her spotter, an older woman named Ellen who had once taught wind reading before bureaucracy pushed her aside, settled in behind the glass. Wind squirrely, Ellen murmured. But it's consistent in its bad manners. Maya smiled, just a little. So am I. They confirmed the distance. It was absurd. So far the target looked like a rumor. The air between them wasn't empty, it was alive, tugging and twisting, eager to ruin a good plan. Maya dialed, then undialed, trusting the math but trusting her gut more. She remembered every dismissal, every note scribbled in red. She let them go. The first shot missed, not by much, but enough to draw a ripple through the crowd. Maya didn't flinch. She adjusted, listened to the wind like it was confessing something it didn't want to say. The second shot landed closer. The third kissed steel and rang out like a bell in a church that hadn't seen hope in years. Silence followed, the heavy, holy kind. Then the officials conferred, checked instruments, recalculated. Maya stayed still. She had learned that stillness didn't mean stopping, it meant waiting for the world to catch up. When they announced the confirmation, the number rolled over the range like thunder. A new record, longer than any before it, achieved not by bravado, but by patience sharpened into steel. Some clapped, some stared. One instructor, the same who had questioned her instinct, took off his cap and rubbed his eyes like the day had finally made sense. Maya stood, legs unsteady, and shook Ellen's hand. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. Later, when the cameras asked her how it felt to prove them wrong, Maya chose her words carefully. "I didn't come back to break anything," she said. "I came back because I wasn't finished listening." The school called a week later. An invitation, a reconsideration. Maya thanked them, and declined. Not out of spite, but clarity. She had found something better than acceptance. She had found herself. In the end, the record would be broken again, as all records are. But the story that lasted wasn't about distance or numbers. It was about a woman who refused to let a thin piece of paper define the reach of her spirit. About learning that rejection can be a teacher, and patience a weapon, and that sometimes the longest shot you'll ever take is believing you belong, long before anyone else does.